Next week, we'll be discussing Casualties of War. Ragnar, how was your watch?
It was a very memorable watch because it's one of the few times I had no clue what this movie was going to be about, just that it was directed by Brian De Palma. So I was almost expecting kind of a thriller, but what I got was incredibly heavy, incredibly uh, introspective about the characters. There is a plot, but it's not quite a very fleshed out thriller plot. So it was a very deep and difficult to watch character study, and I really appreciated that. I was engaged the whole time. I probably won't be watching this again anytime soon, but I am very happy that I watched it. It was very affecting. What about you, Margaret?
I came at this film. This was also a first time watch for me, and I came at this film as someone who has seen very few Vietnam War films. I've seen Apocalypse Now, and I've seen Forrest Gump, and that's pretty much it. And I had a pretty deep skepticism coming into this film, largely because I'm really skeptical of narratives that are focused on the brutalization of a woman as a central plot point. But I did read the New Yorker piece titled "Casualties of War" to kind of prep myself, and that was incredibly helpful. And it kind of gave me a framing question for this viewing. And that was this question that the soldier had with the interviewer, which was a generic question about the function of narrative and processing trauma. And he tried to put this narrative in a legal case to make sense of it. It didn't work. He put the narrative in this journalistic sense, and there was still this lack of resolution. So I looked at the film to think of it as another type of narrative to process trauma. And I think that it did that well to some extent, and failed in other ways, but it's definitely worth watching. How about you, Tom?
I saw this movie, I think in 2003, so some years ago, and I saw it as part of a film class. And I, not exactly like Margaret, but I have a skepticism of Vietnam War movies. I've seen very few that I've liked. I'm one of the few people who doesn't like Apocalypse Now. I'm sorry, I have no idea what that movie is supposed to be about. There's a lot of like random dialogue about surfing. But anyway, the same thing with Platoon. I'm not a big Platoon fan. And it was, an odd thing because you're getting an 80s Michael J. Fox as well, which was unexpected in this role. But I really love it. I also really love De Palma, so that's part of the thing. I really like David Rabe, the screenwriter. I'm familiar with some of his plays, and his work tends to be about how war makes psychopaths, and he's a good writer for this type of work. And upon revisiting it, and I think it's been decades since I've seen it. I it was much more overpowering this time than when I first saw it. So in my late 30s, it was much more affecting than in my early 20s when I first encountered it. And it's yeah, it's quite an overwhelming movie. It's a very hard movie to get through, but it also has that kind of sort of sublime aspect. I mean, it's incredible to look at. It's filmed wonderfully, and even when the script goes awry, which I think it does sometimes, it's not a perfect script. I remember Pauline Kael said that uh, great movies have flaws in referring to this, and kind of good movies just sort of they just don't reach heights. However, I think De Palma's camera work is well suited to this, and especially the scene when the woman is killed on the same bridge where they actually filmed the bridge over the River Kwai. Actually, it's that same location. Is incredibly haunting visuals, and to a certain extent you almost want to kind of turn off the sound or turn off the dialogue and just watch a lot of these visuals. But that was maybe my second impression, my second watch of the movie. So I lied when I said I'd give you my first.